Good morning. I kind of run across a little verse this morning in First Corinthians and thought I might use that as my launching pad for talking a little bit about just the kind of attitudes we should have with our jobs and employers and work. And it caused me to look at a couple other areas of my Bible. And any of you guys that are familiar with the book of Philemon, it's kind of a neat little deal because it's in regard to a slave named Onesimus who had run away from his owner, and the owner is Philemon, and Paul's writing to him, and it's apparent that Paul has run across this runaway slave Onesimus, and through discipling him, he's become a Christian, and he tells him the right thing to do is to send him back to his slave master. But Paul sends him back after he's discipled him and instructed him about having a good attitude and learning how to remain where you were when God saved you, and not force your freedom, but allow God to open the doors. Let God move you around where He wants you. Just that, to me, that is always really interesting. I can pull a lot of insight from it about having a good attitude once I've been saved, and letting my Christian character be developed wherever I am, no matter what situation you're in. The important thing isn't the situation. The important thing is how the situation brings around or about your development of Christ-like character. Now, granted, I understand this is always hard when you're going through something, or you feel like you're not being treated right, or some injustice, but if I'm picking up on all these nuances of the New Testament correctly, which I'll just read some of them to you. And this is in First Corinthians, and Paul is dealing with a wide range of situations, from circumcision, should we not be, should we eat this food, not that food, should we be married, not married. I mean, in First Corinthians, he's dealing with a lot of subjects. For those of you that are Christians and, thinking about divorce, well, Paul deals with that. He pretty much tells us God's commandments haven't changed, and we're to obey God's commandments, and we should remain with, the husband that we've married, or wife. So he's dealing with that, and then he says, this is my rule for all the churches. For instance, it's just an example. A man who was circumcised before he became a believer should not try to reverse it. And a man who was uncircumcised when he became a believer should not be circumcised now. For it makes no difference whether a man has been circumcised. The important thing is to keep God's commandments. See, God's commandments train us to have godlike character. Yes, each of you should remain as you were when God called you. How many times do we try to force changes in our life instead of letting the Lord teach us what He wants to teach us and develop our character where we are? And the byproduct of that is, when people watch you be changed right before their eyes, it changes them. And you don't always know the effect it has now. So that's a good call right here. Something good to pay attention to. You remain as you were when God called you. Are you a slave? He says. Don't let that worry you. But if you get a chance to be free, take it. And remember, if you were a slave when the Lord called you, you are now free in the Lord. If you were free when the Lord called you, you are now a slave to Christ. God paid a high price for you, so don't be enslaved by the world. Each of you, dear brothers and sisters, should remain as you were when God first called you. So he goes on from there. But I think that right there would be a good little piece of advice for somebody today. I'm just flipping to Colossians, and he's giving instructions back here in Colossians. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything you do. Try to please them all the time, not just when they're watching you. Serve them sincerely because of your reverent fear of the Lord. Work willingly at whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people. Remember that the Lord will give you an inheritance as your reward, and that the master you are serving is Christ. But if you do what is wrong, you will be paid back for the wrong you have done, for God has no favorites. We can take a lot from there, because when we use real slavery as our example, we have the most extreme condition. And if we can't go to a job where we're being paid and have that same attitude that we're a slave to Christ, that we're going to go and exhibit the best integrity, the best characteristics, because we are followers of Christ. No matter how you think you're being treated, you may think in their eyes that you look like a doormat, but you're not. You willingly become a slave to Christ, and because he says to do it, you're doing it to him and for him. And then a day will come when someone's life will be changed because of your good attitude. The fact that you're on work on time, that you work hard, you do your job. You don't complain, you don't stir up trouble, you don't gossip. So there's a lot that can be pulled from this. And if slavery is the worst case scenario in here, and slaves are instructed to have a good attitude, then how much more should we that are getting paid to do something? Anyway, I think what we could take from that today is don't force changes. Where God saves you, let him start developing you and your character, and then watch for doors to open. Watch for the breadcrumbs to drop as the Lord leads you where he wants to lead you. Love you guys. Have a good day. Hope that helps.